feel like they're wrapped around the world. Yes, I live my life just for you. Just for you.
So from Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, for the last generation,
I'm
you have a choice.
BaderMarshall.com, the Republican
I
candidate
did
for
not
governor.
have sexual relations with
And I
that
realized
woman.
that this is something
Miss
he
Lewinsky.
is
We're not going to
inherent.
be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
Hey, good morning, Cleveland. Welcome to Backfire. Good morning, Franklin, John.
Good morning.
How's everybody going this week? Everybody had a good week?
It's been quite a week. Real quickly, can I say had some really good friends who've had a tough week. Delivered a baby last Wednesday. The baby's wonderful, but Sharon and Billy Smith have had a tough experience in Skyridge Hospital the last week, and looks like they've turned the corner, and they say thanks for all the prayers and support that they've gotten out there.
What good? What were they having a baby delivery?
They had a baby Wednesday. The baby was perfect. Mom had a lot of complications in the delivery. Spent almost a week in ICU, and it was a little scary for everybody for a while. But Mom and baby were reunited yesterday, and a real cause for celebration.
Well, good.
Exactly.
All right. You know, we had a UT player learn the hard way not to hit a girl the other day. I noticed that we had a UT player that
lost everything.
He lost everything. He's a 4-star recruit. Dropped after police say he punched his ex-girlfriend.
Well, you got to appreciate that that there was no moral ambiguity in the UT football program about that.
Actually, there's no moral ambiguity at UT with regards to the Freedom from Religious Foundation. Apparently, the Wisconsin group that goes around the country suing everybody because we say a prayer to a deity that they don't believe in, which is kind of hard to understand. If you don't believe in it, why does it bother you quite so much? But they sent a letter apparently demanding that UT quit opening the games with a prayer, and apparently the chancellor just said, you know what, we've always done it, we're going to continue to do it, you do whatever you need to do, we're not changing, which I applaud him for taking that stand.
You know, I do too.
In fact, he apparently cited court cases and everything in his letter and said basically go away.
You know, I applaud that also, but you know, on the other hand, here's a little league, another high school coach. I don't have the article here in front of me, but I was reading about that was suspended because he wouldn't give up praying with his team.
I know.
I mean, that it's just amazing how these the superintendent of schools suspended him.
You got a kid in, I believe he was Los Angeles or San Diego. He was suspended for sharing his lunch with another kid. The kid didn't want to eat. They had cheese sandwiches or something, I'm sure courtesy of Michelle Obama's new guidelines. And this kid had something from home, and so he shared his sandwich, and they suspended him for sharing his sandwich.
That way, how can they suspend a kid?
They have a policy. They're afraid somebody will eat something they're allergic to, and so they have a policy that you're not allowed to share food. And he let the boy have half his sandwich, and I think they suspended him for 3 days for being nice and kind to his fellow student.
Our world is really a kind of a screwed up place right now with some of the thinking that. What gets me is all the minorities come up with these crazy ideas, and then the majorities have to do it.
A lot of it is multiculturalism.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that's been interesting lately. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has now declared, and this is the Chancellor of Germany, multiculturalism has utterly failed. Australia's ex-prime minister, Spain's ex-prime minister have all reached the same conclusion about multiculturalism. British Prime Minister said that it is fostering extremist ideology and directly contributing to homegrown Islamic terrorism. But, of course, over here, we're still teaching it on our college campuses. Now, if you're a Christian, you can be oppressed, but apparently no one else can be oppressed because we have to actually teach multiculturalism.
Well, I hate to sound a warning bell, but history has taught us that Germany being too monocultured is not necessarily a good thing.
Well, Franklin, I'm glad you said that because I'm actually looking at an essay that Walter Williams wrote on this. So the idea of multiculturalism is that it's not right to assign values to cultures, that it's all that's all part of this whole relativism. Part of the attack on Christianity is all based on relativism. So let me just ask you some questions he asked. Is forced female genital mutilation as practiced in nearly 30 sub-Saharan African and Middle Eastern countries a morally equivalent cultural value? Slavery is practiced in Mauritania, Mali, Niger, Chad, and Sudan. Is it morally equivalent?
No.
Wait a minute.
Well,
in the Middle East, there are numerous limits placed on women, such as prohibitions on driving, employment, and education. Under Islamic law countries, female adulterers face death by stoning. Thieves face punishment of having their hands severed. Homosexuality is a crime punishable by death. Are all of these culturally, morally equivalent, Franklin?
Well, fortunately, John, we can agree that the United States government has taken a position against all of those things, in spite of your claim that we
teach on universities that all cultures are morally equivalent. I just read you through some of the real pillars of the Muslim culture. Is that morally equivalent?
Those aren't pillars of Muslim
They absolutely
culture.
are, Franklin.
They're
Get your
pillars of
Quran out and read them.
Franklin,
there's
John, no, wait a minute. Hold on, John.
I've read
hold
the
on.
Quran,
I mean,
Franklin.
hold on.
Have you?
Yeah, and I've read the Old
let's stay
Testament
civil
too,
early this
and you
morning.
don't accept that either.
Franklin, let me explain this to you. The Quran, the second half of the Quran supersedes the first half, just like the New Testament and the Old Testament.
I'm sorry, that doesn't appear anywhere in the Bible.
The difference here is Jesus taught to love your neighbor. Muslims are taught by Allah in the second half to kill anybody that's not a Muslim. Now, you can argue all you want, Franklin. It's in the book.
I am saying to you, John, that you're painting with such a broad stroke.
Absolutely. When they're lopping people's heads off, I'm painting with a broad stroke. I'd like to paint with a broad
what
tomahawk
you say
warhawk.
is they do this in Mauritania. Okay. Well, we condemn Mauritania for what they're doing.
Well,
everybody agrees on that.
Where's the Saudis who are funding most of the Wahhabi sect schools that teach this? Are they condemning it in Mauritania?
I don't know.
No, they're our new best buddy helping the president with the bombing.
Do you want them to help them or not?
Well, I don't know, Franklin. There's a lot on the liberal side of this coin. Thomas Friedman wrote a story that maybe we shouldn't be doing anything because as long as we do something, then the Saudis get to sit back, have it done, and then criticize us.
Well, I will say this, John.
Now, that's your liberal New York Times reporter saying that.
What I would say, John, is, and I would hope you'd agree, actually, the United States Congress across both parties has done a horrible job in the last week. They should have not been scurrying home to work on their re-elections. They should be in Washington having a serious debate about all these issues.
Well, actually, I'm
and
glad you brought
Bill.
that up,
Don't
Franklin.
you think?
Well, no, not really. Here's why. Because the president told him he didn't need it. Here's Bob Corker that you like to
he
throw
doesn't
up
need
to me
any help from
all the
Congress.
time. This is Senator Corker. He says that the Obama – now, he supports what we're doing. But he said the Obama administration has exhibited the worst judgment possible by not seeking explicit authorization for Congress for the full use of military force against ISIS.
Here's the problem with that analysis. There's absolutely nothing preventing the Congress from taking this issue up. Nothing. Except that
the president said, he's already done it,
stop
Franklin.
it. And stop giving cover to these lily-livered people in Washington across both parties. This is a shame what they're doing.
No,
they
Franklin.
ran from this issue.
Here's
they
a
like
shame.
they like getting on television and saying how awful everything is, or this ought to be done, or that should be done. But they'll be damned if they're going to stand up and take a vote on it. It's an embarrassment what they're doing, and they violated their oaths by the way they've handled
Franklin,
it. And that's
here's
Democrats
your
and
United
Republicans.
States Senator.
And if you stand up for them, you're just giving them
Here's
cover
what
for
I'm
all the
saying,
bad
Franklin.
government you like
I'm
to
saying
complain
that
about.
you and your liberals who criticized Bush for having 40 countries involved are bragging about Obama having 5. Now, look, I'm glad he's doing what little he's finally come to the table to do. But you don't have the integrity to say he's violating in a worse way exactly
I didn't
what you
criticize
criticized
Bush for having a coalition.
Absolutely.
Wait a
Every
minute.
one of y'all said, oh, he doesn't have any help. He doesn't have any coalition.
Well, we're starting
He's
early.
got 40 guys.
No.
This guy had 5.
All right, let me start. We're starting a little early here. I was going to talk about some local things, but I brought up something about a high school football coach who couldn't pray with his team, and then this started.
That's where we go.
Anyway, I'm going to come back to this one more time. Did President Obama not say that he did not need the Congress?
He absolutely said that.
Is that helpful? Was
Yeah.
that a good thing for a leader of a democracy to say, I don't need you?
I would say that it is the position that elected presidents of the United States have
Bush say
largely
it?
taken.
Did Bush say it?
Well, we weren't already involved in this war.
We weren't involved in this either.
Franklin,
according to you, we have been.
Franklin, let me say something about President Obama. He shoots himself in the foot every week. Now, every week, I have to say, every week,
Let me
there's
tell-
something new. No, let me
Well,
finish.
Exactly where
No.
did he shoot himself in the foot this week?
How about saluting his Marines with a
coffee
latte
cup
in his hand?
He can't even manage to put a coffee cup out of his hand.
And this is
Franklin-
a perfect example of how goofy the debate is in this country.
No.
We're here talking about whether we go
It's
to
called
war
respect.
or not,
It's
and you
called
guys
respect.
are worried about the manner in which the president
That's
salutes.
No, we're worried about the
That's
way
the
he treats
problem
the
here.
men that he's
Listen,
asking to go to war.
It is,
You mean
Franklin.
when he
It's
increased the
disrespectful.
benefits for them?
Franklin.
You think that was more important?
Franklin, you
This
ask
is
any
how
veteran-
dumb
ask
this
any
debate has
veteran.
gotten.
Ask any veteran about the
About
latte
what that
salute.
means to them.
What it
Sure
means to
it
them.
does, John, and I'm not talking about what veterans
Well,
feel,
it's called
but
respect.
The idea that we're in here debating
We're not
this
debating.
when we're
We
talking about
simply-
going to
You
we're
war.
asked
not
me a
debating at all,
question.
Franklin.
You asked
We
me a
simply
question.
told you the guy screws
And that's-
up on his own
that's
accord all the
point.
time,
That's the
and you
point, though.
can't even agree.
The reason we're
Did he
having
shoot
these
himself in the
crazy
foot?
discussions is because you people would rather talk about
No,
that
the reason
than the war.
The reason
Okay.
we're having these crazy discussions is because you and your liberal buddies elected a black man instead of a prepared man who had the ability to do the job. It was more important for you to have a demographic victory than an actual capable president.
Actually, it was more important to have a president with half a brain.
No, if you do the surveys, Franklin,
We've
people
got
voted for him because
We've
they
got
said
one.
they said, "Oh,
he sure got more than the last one
they
had.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's
His grades
exactly
don't
right.
reflect it. Bush was way above him, way above Kerry. His score, everything was above,
John,
even though you all
you-
said he was an idiot.
You are out of your freaking
No, I'm
mind.
not, Franklin. Al Gore, the genius, failed out of 2 different schools, and yet they still said he was smarter than
The
Bush.
president of the Harvard Law Review had worse grades
Who
than
never
George W.
wrote
Bush.
a review.
Are you crazy?
Never wrote a review, Franklin. Where's his transcript from Occidental College? Where's any of his
have
transcripts?
lost your freaking
Franklin, I
mind.
can bring you all kinds of comments from professors. He was a middle-of-the-road student at best. They can't figure out. He's the Harvard. You're right. Harvard
Wait,
Law
let
Review
me guess,
never
John.
reviewed
it was
anything.
part of the United Nations conspiracy to get him elected.
I don't know, Franklin.
You have lost your mind.
Matter of fact, you need to talk to your Democrat components because they're the ones that keep suing over all of those things.
There's
the
if you
former
wanna- if you wanna
Democratic
know why
Assistant Attorney
there's
General of
any
the state of
problems in the
Pennsylvania.
United States, you're hearing it right now.
No,
this
Franklin.
bizarre
Here-
silliness.
Let me explain what.
We're
how,
talking about a war, and you're actually focused on whether the president of the United States made good grades when he was a sophomore in college.
No, what I'm focused
This is
on.
what's wrong
what
with
I'm
it.
focused on, Ian. Here's the thing,
You've
Franklin.
absolutely lost your mind.
Let me explain this to you, Franklin. Here's what I'm focused on. When I criticize Obama for the stimulus, I will turn right back around and say, and you know what? The bailout that Bush put together was wrong. wrong too, because I'm motivated
You were
by
wrong
what
on
I
both-
think is
you
right.
were wrong
I'm
on both
motivated by what I think is right and wrong. You, on the other hand, this guy, you will never say, the coffee cup, Franklin, all we're saying is he's the president of the United States. He's got cameras on him all the time.
What
He's in
we're
the
saying-
middle of a war. Let me finish.
And he knows there's two Marines
he
gonna
knows
be
that
sitting
they're
there.
being watched. He knows that there's a camera out there, and he can't be bothered to set his coffee cup down and give a decent salute to a Marine. It's not about the fact that that's a huge issue. It's about the fact that
it
he
is,
doesn't
John.
understand
It
it's
is,
a
John.
huge issue.
It is, John. Do you have any idea how many times he's come off that helicopter in the last 3 weeks?
It doesn't
And
matter.
let
It
me ask you-
doesn't matter.
Oh, sure it does.
He knows there's two Marines sitting at the bottom of those steps every
That
time
he's
he
gonna
comes
have
out
to
of there.
salute.
And you know what?
Respect.
And you
It's
know what?
Military.
And you know what, Steve Hickson, you were in the military.
I was, and I
you-
was taught.
And you know what else? You saw colonels and majors give a half-hearted salute 1,000 times.
No, sir, I
No,
did
sir.
not. No,
did.
sir, I did
It's
not.
against the
Because
unit.
I've been on a military base and I've seen it.
No, sir, I did not.
Well,
did
Franklin,
not.
I
And
tell
the
you what.
point is still that in the midst of all this, you find a moral equivalence to coming off of a helicopter
I
with a
asked
coffee
you-
cup and the decision to go to war.
I
It's
asked
crazy.
you-
Those
I
are the
asked
men
you-
he's asking to risk his life, and he can't be bothered to give a proper military salute. Our point is he doesn't care. This is all a game to him. Nothing serious, and you defending him. You know what? You know how this all
A
could have been avoided.
game?
It's a game to him, Franklin. All of it's a game to him. It's a.
Why-
It's a. Matter
Why
of
is
fact,
he-
do you think he started bombing in Syria the day before he went to deliver a speech at the UN just by coincidence?
Oh, no, I don't think that, John, but I know this. Almost every conservative commentator I heard in the last 24 hours thought that was perfectly calculated on his
It
part.
may be
and they
perfectly
thought it was the
calculated,
right
but
thing to
that-
do.
but you're admitting it's
you,
calculated. I didn't say that.
Everybody thinks that was the right
I
thing
said
to
it was
do,
calculated.
and you can't admit it.
No,
Wait a-
Franklin,
wait a-
here, let me correct
Because
you.
of your
Let me
hatred.
correct. I don't hate the man at all.
You do hate him.
Franklin, listen to me. I didn't say
It
it wasn't a good
exceeds
move.
your ability
Can you
to
hear
love
me,
your
Franklin?
country today.
I
Your
didn't
hatred for the
say,
president.
listen real close, I didn't say it wasn't a good move. I said it was a calculated move. Everything with the man is calculated.
I want to say something real quick. I just want to say, so Franklin, I believe you've had a bad week even on CNN this week.
What?
I believe you've had a bad week even on CNN this week with whatever's going on your newscast. I mean, you come in here out of the box yelling, the man shot himself in the foot with a latte salute. You asked me what he did. I said he does something every week. Now then, how can Lois Lerner come out and talk to the press?
She's a victim now.
How can she?
She is a victim now.
She's a victim now.
I don't understand
I mean,
the question.
she
How
gave
can
an
she?
interview
No,
and
I
talked
understand
about how
that, but I
pitiful
don't understand
this is.
what you're asking me.
Well, did she not take the fifth about with the she won't talk to Congress about the IRS, but she's okay to talk to the press about
That's
it?
what the Constitution provides.
Well, actually,
You can't testify. You can take the fifth with regard to testimony under oath.
Yeah,
She's
but
not
you
under
also
oath. She can
can't
say
give
anything
your
she wants.
testimony and then
Well-
plead the fifth, which is what she did. She actually violated the fifth in testifying.
That's not actually accurate. But
Well,
anyway.
Franklin, you have to admit that's at least open to judicial interpretation. She went in, defended herself, and then pled the fifth.
Okay, most judges who've looked at that issue concluded otherwise.
So in
That's
other
all I
words,
can
she
say.
gets to go, I didn't do it, but I'm not going to give you any proof under my Fifth Amendment rights. Is that it? That's how that was meant to work?
Basically, that's correct, John.
You're telling me that you can take a client into court, he can lay out his case of his defense, but then say on testimony in reverse from the prosecutor, he can go, but I plead the fifth now.
Well,
That's what she did. She defended
essentially,
herself,
yes,
and
you
then she
could do
pled
that,
the fifth.
but that's not exactly what happened. But yes.
Well, here's the point, Franklin. If she really cared about
look,
the American people,
I'm not,
she'd just
look, I'm not,
openly
I'm
and
not
honestly
taking Lois
testify.
Lerner's side here.
Yeah, you are.
No, I'm not. I'm telling you that that's
Well,
what
she-
the Constitution
well, when she's
provides,
living
and
in
I
a
assume you
$2.5
support
million
that.
house,
I assume you
and
support that.
we know that she targeted people, and over
What does that have to do with it?
we deserve the truth.
No, I mean, what does it have to do the size of her house? What does it have to do with how much money
because
her
it's
husband
an insult
makes?
to the regular
What
population.
does that have to do with
It's
anything?
an insult to the good people who were giving money and donating to these organizations that she targeted because she didn't like their political leanings, while she lives in this luxurious home afforded to her by those very same taxpayers. It's an insult to them.
Well, I don't know if what she was making supported that lifestyle, but I understand where you're coming from.
I assure you that between her and her husband, their connections are what allowed them to have the big, fancy jobs that they had. They're both he was a connected lobbyist. So I don't care if you want to say he earned the bulk of the money. It still comes from her government connections and her political connections, all of which stem from the fact that if we didn't have an IRS, she wouldn't have had a job. If we hadn't passed the 13th Amendment and put in a progressive income tax, we probably could have avoided all
But we did,
of this.
and you support the Constitution.
Let me ask
right?
you, do you
Well,
think
I have to support the Constitution, Franklin.
Okay.
do you think that she felt comfortable talking to the press after taking the fifth?
Of course she felt comfortable because they're not going to chat. It was a softball interview. If you read it, they didn't push her. They didn't ask any hard questions. This is all PR. Once again, just like I was talking about the president, it's all about what I can get away with and how I manipulate the image. And that's all this is.
I think she feels comfortable she's not going to be prosecuted for anything. That's what I think.
Probably so.
I think she's in a comfortable zone. Anyway, I came in this morning and asked Franklin if he'd like to talk about anything. I was going to talk about some local stuff. I think we better talk about some local stuff. Let's calm this down a little bit, then we'll get going. Eric Watson made some great reorganization plans, it looks like. John, I know you're all over saving money.
I am.
So restructuring what's going on and eliminating a few positions but shifting some around. In other words, he's using the money he's got and he's shifting it around. That's a good thing, right?
Well, I mean, I think you've seen, from what I understand, some of the men on the bottom end of the pay scale have gotten some pay increases because they've eliminated some positions on the top end. Some of the numbers, and I don't know the numbers, but some of the numbers I saw, there were a lot of people in administration. And, you know, the point of the reason we pay our taxes is to be safe and protected in our homes and on the public streets. Yeah. And so for me, you know, I understand there has to be some administration, but I think the less administration and the more on the ground forces you can have, the better.
Anyway, hard to argue with the reorganization.
Yeah, it is. That's a good article.
And I think,
you know, if he comes up, when's the budget time? If he doesn't come in and ask for another $5 million,
well, they'll roll around probably in January or February. They have to be in, and I may have this wrong, but they pass that budget. It takes effect, I think, July 1st, and so they have to work that through in March, April, May timeline.
So, you know, all the reorganization's fine. Looks like everything's great here. What's going on? But then if you come back, don't ask for another $1 million or something in the budget, we're in good shape.
Well, you know, we've had that in the past. We've had huge budget requests. I don't think you'll see that here.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not being critical. He's just got on the job, so I understand that there should be a lot of analysis going on and a lot of that. I think there are probably other areas that of savings that are available in the sheriff's department, and I hope that time will allow them to identify those things.
I think I will say this. You know, I think he was very smart to bring the commissioners in and tour the facility and point out what he felt like were deficiencies in the facility that will need to be addressed.
Right.
So there may be some actual capital outlays. From what I understand, there are some deficiencies in the jail and some of that may have to be addressed. And again, I think it was a very smart move to say, look, this is day one. I want you to see what I've got.
It was politically smart because they can't say it was any lack of attention on his part.
Well, it's just, it's not politically, it's just smart. You know, hey, look, if you're going to judge me, I want you to see what I started with. So I think that was a good, but my point is, from what I understand, there may be some capital outlays, and where that, you know, whether that's going to be available in his budget or whether that's going to have to come from outside, I don't know.
I bet you there's a bunch of people over there locked up that can paint and do whatever they need to do.
Well, I can tell you, we have several.
I'd rather give them time served.
Well, we have several business people in town that are really supportive of having a work camp, because a lot of those guys over there that are in this high security facility don't need to be in the high security facility. They're nonviolent criminal offenders. Some of them are financial, you know, offenders, things like that. There are people in the community that are willing to actually raise the money for a tent camp. that would be built adjacent to that for some of these people to be able to do work release, to work in more of a barracks or similar to what Sheriff Joe Arpaio has out in Arizona. And there are people that said, we will raise the money for you. I just think we need to get on the ball on some stuff like that.
Too bad we don't have the old National Guard Armory.
Well, it was kind of a shame to watch that be
torn down.
I
mean, there was a lot of history there that went away. But I know I was over in Memphis. I may have said this before, but they used an old armory building and put bunks in it and some of that kind of stuff and put a fence around it, and that was their
Well, folks, there are responsible citizens willing to help try to raise the money to build a work camp for the nonviolent offenders. You think that's a good idea? Start calling your elected officials. Call the county officials. Call the sheriff's department. Let them know that you support that idea.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Check into cash.
Turn your car into cash at Check Into Cash.
Get an auto title loan today for up to $2,500.
At Check Into Cash, you get the most for your car, and we make it quick, easy, and confidential.
Stop in for an auto title loan today or a payday advance for up to $425. Call toll-free 877-262-CASH.
Title loan amount determined by value of car and ability to repay. Borrowers often use payday advances over a period of months, which can be expensive. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Did you know that U.S. Money Shops cashes all checks, even the ones most check cashers reject? Tax refund checks, government checks, payroll checks, and many more. And when you cash a check with U.S. Money Shops, we'll give you 10% off your next purchase. At U.S. Money Shops, we have everything you need at a fraction of regular retail. So stop by one of our 11 locations or visit us online at usmoneyshops.com.
Buy or sell or apply today, the better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Some restrictions may apply. See store for details.
Friday. Come one, come all to the Cleveland Speedway. That's right, race fans, are you ready for the thrill of down-home, high-speed, no-hold-back racing? Get ready for the all-new Cleveland Speedway. This Friday, racing comes back to Cleveland. It's time to get your dirt on. An all-new track, an all-new grandstand, and an all-new racing experience. The Cleveland Speedway this Friday. Bring the entire family. Gates open at 6:30. Racing starts at 7:30. If you love dirt track racing, get ready for the all-new Cleveland Speedway. This Friday, racing returns to Cleveland Speedway. Don't miss it. See you this Friday at the Cleveland Speedway. Friday.
Wheeler Technologies has moved. Visit them at their new location at 490 Grove Avenue Southwest next to Bradley Rentals. Same great folks, same great service with a better location to serve you. Call Wheeler Technologies for voice, data, and security needs at 664-TECH. That's 664-8324. And remember, depend on Wheeler Technologies for the current time and temperature every day at 476-1111. Tennessee Alarm Contractor C1750.
If you need a little green, Lending Frog is making deals. He'll lend you cash on any kind of wheels. Borrow just a little, or you can borrow big. Lending Frog is a new financial gig. It's hip to hop into cash. LendingFrog.com is making a splash. Dig it, dig it.
This is Perry Stone from Cleveland, Tennessee, inviting you to join me in the month of September for a September to Remember Revival and Restoration. September the 2nd, the 9th, and 16th, Pastor Mark Castow will be bringing a powerful word. John Kilpatrick is joining us on Tuesday the 23rd, and I'm ministering on Tuesday the 30th. The entire month of September is set aside for restoration, revival, and renewal for you and your family. Join me at OCI in Cleveland, Tennessee, and for more information, go to OCIministries.org. We're looking forward to seeing you Tuesday in September.
Ah, the sounds of summer. If you had a pool, from Matthews Pool and Spa Company, 902 Sahara Drive in Cleveland, Tennessee. Call them at 423-476-4521 and get the pool or spa of your dreams. Do it now, Cleveland. Locally owned and operated for over 25 years right here in Cleveland, Tennessee, with over 75 years of total experience in the installation of pools and spas. So check out Matthews Pool and Spa for your new pool, spa, or any accessories you may need for a pool or spa you already have. Check them out here in Cleveland on Sahara Drive, 476-4521. Look out, kids, I'm gonna jump. Woo!
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
All right, we're back. We're back. We've calmed them down. We gave them both a sedative. I think everything will be better this second half.
You were a little hot too, Steve. Now don't blame it all on me, Franklin.
The latte salute got me. Anyway, I like the new White House security plan, don't you?
Oh, it's wonderful. Have you read this guy's background?
Read some of it.
You talking
Apparently
about?
He's been interviewed by the authorities
interviewed.
a couple of times
No.
in the last couple of months.
He's been picked up.
Yeah, he's got a bad history.
Let me read you a little bit of it. It said, on Monday, they found 800 rounds of ammunition, 2 hatchets, and a machete in his car after they searched it on Friday. Now, in late August, the Secret Service officer stopped him in front of the fence on the White House South Lawn after they noticed a hatchet in his waistband. Now, that's just a month ago, and that wasn't another organization. That was the Secret Service themselves. But in July, he was arrested after he led Virginia troopers on a high-speed pursuit in Interstate 81. After he was stopped, police found his vehicle filled with weapons. They found 11 guns, including 2 shotguns and 4 rifles, some equipped with scopes and bipods that a sniper would use, and a map of Washington, D.C. with writing and a line drawn to the White House on it. He also had 4 pistols, 3 of them loaded, and a revolver. All of that was reported to the Secret Service.
How can they keep letting this guy go without?
Well, I mean, this is not he got pulled over for driving erratically. I mean, God, he got pulled over and had an arsenal in his car with a map of D.C. and the White House circled on it.
Oh, John, if we brought somebody in and had them pat you down, you probably have that much on you.
I'm not in D.C. with a map of what, and you know what? If I was and I had a map of D.C. with a circle on the White House, I ought to be interviewed.
Well,
on top of this,
first of all, you're right that gave them plenty of reason for concern. I agree with that. The question, legitimately though, is, you're implying that he should just be held somewhere for what?
No, actually, I'm not.
I think he's a mental. I agree. He's got mental issues.
I absolutely
that's
agree
not
with
the
you.
whole story, though. Let me get.
I
to the rest
totally
of this.
agree with you. I'm just saying. Let's talk about what you could really do.
Well, let me tell you what you could do. You could at least follow your protocols. For example, according to officials briefed on the review, one of the biggest questions the senior Secret Service officials want answered is why the officer on the ground did not deploy the attack dogs that are specifically trained to stop intruders. Sure. On the grounds. At all times, there are several muzzled Belgian Malinois on the White House grounds. Mm-hmm. The early assessment by the officials said that the dog handler should have quickly removed the muzzles and unleashed the dogs. Also, the guard at the front desk was supposed to immediately lock the door when the alarm is sounded. Now, the other thing, this is a harsh thing. Ron Kessler, who's written a new book on Secret Service and First Families, made this comment. He said, look, I understand this is harsh, but in years past, there have been plenty of people who sprinted across the lawn and they were shot dead before they got to the front door. And that's actually the protocol. Now, if it turns out the guy's just a crazy, well, I'm sorry, that's a tragedy. But the point is, he got in the front door. What if he'd had a bomb on him? What if he'd had, a biological agent on him? He should. I hate to say this. He should have been shot on the lawn before he got to the front door.
Well, it's strange that someone could jump the fence, run across the lawn, and go in the front door.
It's the second time that he's been stopped at the fence.
I mean,
well,
the new security plan is to lock the door.
Well, that's the old plan. They didn't do it. They didn't do the lock the door plan.
Well, let me give you just a little bit of background, and I'm not disagreeing with John here, but. If you've taken a White House tour, they actually bring you out that door. You come right out the front door of the White House. Uh-huh. You come in the basement, you go up through part of the first floor, and then you actually come out the main lobby of the White House, out that front door that we've all seen that this guy ran up to. And I guess in theory, it ought to be able to open from the inside going out, but not the other way around. But that's actually what happens because those tours are going on all day long.
Are they giving tours again?
Sure.
I thought they had them.
Well,
and they just opened the new White House Visitor Center a couple weeks ago. Actually,
well, they've actually now said that they're now going to build a wall to keep illegal people from getting in. But I think apparently that won't work on the Mexican border, but it apparently will work around the White House itself.
Oh,
they are apparently going to build a second wall.
It's real interesting that you always use that example, but the fact is the Canadian border is far less secure than the Mexican border, and that's where actual terrorists have been apprehended trying to get into the country.
Well, Franklin, wouldn't that be a lot like saying, there's a lot of murderous people out there, so why try to catch any of the murderers?
Well, I don't know, John. Maybe the theory would be that you target your resources at the places of greatest vulnerability. That would seem to be logical.
Well, the problem is now...
I'm just pointing out to you that we have a bigger border there.
You're right, we do.
And it's less secure.
But more people are piling across the smaller border in Mexico. So right now, that's the greater concern. But on top of the fact,
greater concern would be who comes across the border, not the number of them.
Well, I agree, Franklin. But if the last couple of years, couple million people have come across, I'm thinking there's a good chance some of them were terrorists. On the matter of fact, of the 100 people
you're
I brought up,
that, but you have no evidence
of the 100 people that I brought up a week or two ago that have joined ISIS to fight, at least 40 of them, and this is a Democrat lawmaker made this speech, which amazingly didn't get much coverage in the press. At least 40 of them have now re-entered the country.
What about Australia? I love the way Australia took action against ISIS. They gathered them up in the whole country. 800 police officers go out and arrest all the suspicious characters.
What would they do with them then?
I don't know. I haven't heard that part of the story yet.
That's the thing. But arresting's one thing.
Well, I mean, they had them on their knees, and they were putting them. And this was right after they'd had a threat that they were going to start beheading people in Australia. They took action. They're going to clear them out. They told me. I read the article that they were going to send them back to where they came from. That'd probably be.
So they're not Australian citizens then.
No. They're foreign.
Well, don't you think when someone leaves their country and goes to fight an enemy that is sworn to attack their own country that maybe they should lose their U.S. citizen rights?
Well, you know what, John? You and I could probably agree on that, but that doesn't mean that we have the legal ability to do that now. That would require some congressional action to do that.
No, actually, we under all kinds of authority. When those people, the 40 that supposedly have returned to the country, they could have been gathered up as soon as they were presented at whatever border port they came through. And
that's not what you said. You're talking about revoking their citizenship. Well, that requires some legal authorization, which I don't believe anybody has.
Well, let me ask you a question. When you get blown up by a drone, or have you had your citizenship revoked? Or are you still a citizen after you're blown to smithereens? So this administration has the legal authority to kill you as a U.S. citizen, but they don't have the legal authority to revoke your citizenship. I think being killed is about the most extreme revocation of your citizenship there is.
Which end of this spectrum are you actually on, John? I'm trying to figure it out.
My point is, Franklin,
your criticism seemed to come from both ends.
It's the same criticism I had earlier. It's all a game to this White House. They can blow you up and not feel like they have to give any legal justification for that. But when someone says, hey, what are you going to do about the citizenship of these 100 people we've identified that are gone to fight with ISIS, they go, oh, well, we're still researching that. We don't know whether we have authority to do that or not. You can kill them, but you can't revoke their citizenship? Come on.
You want to talk about the war? No,
sure.
Franklin, this morning I asked him, I said, what would you like to talk about? He said, well, let's talk about the war.
Well, let's talk about what did happen this week.
All right.
By all accounts, 4 Arab nations dropped bombs on other Arabs, in this case, alongside us. I'd say that's a positive development. Even though there's plenty of things that they still need to do a better job of, that's a good start.
Are you saying Obama got them to do that?
I don't care who got them to do it. That's the point.
I will say
that is the point.
And that is something he should be complimented on.
And here's the thing where I think is important is that we take a long-term view about this. And the long-term view is, and this is something the president has said, but I absolutely agree with it, if it's just viewed in the Arab world as the United States coming to kill Muslims, that's not in our long-term interest. If they're joining with us, these Arab nations, and participating in it, then it doesn't come across quite that way, and it gives us a greater hope for success. Now, I don't know if it's going to be successful or not, because I have some concerns that all that we really do in these conflicts is we go in, eradicate them somewhere, and they just move to a different country and start all over again.
Well, we might.
That's a concern.
We might need to
but
eradicate
this is a good
them
start.
with more prejudice.
Well, we've certainly expended a lot of munitions in the last 13
Franklin,
years, and I wouldn't say that we've necessarily lowered the number of potential
Look,
terrorists.
all right, I'm going to say the politically incorrect thing. One of our problems here is when we talk about civilian casualties. We never talked about civilian casualties in World War II. War's a horrible thing, and don't get me wrong, folks. I'm not saying I want civilians to be killed, but the problem here is we go in and on the schoolyard bully, Franklin, when there's pushing back and forth, I push, you push, I push, you push, until one of us knocks the crap out of the other one and hurts them bad enough that they don't want to continue the fight will go on. So personally, I think what he's done, getting the 5 nations, was a good thing. I will tell you, I'm concerned, the international community that our press was so enamored with when Bush was doing this, they haven't mentioned the fact that France has condemned what we've done. Russia, who is completely, being disingenuous, has condemned us. But the real worrisome one was Egypt. Egypt's president said they were not participating because they were afraid that Obama wouldn't stay in the fight, that he would start this and then he would pull out. Now, Franklin, we've argued a lot over the last couple of years, and you always say, what do you want him to do? What do you want him to do? And my argument wasn't that he wasn't always doing something that was okay. My point was what got us in this condition. It's his leadership, or lack thereof, over the last 6 years that leads a country like Egypt to say, we're not going to participate because we're not sure you'll follow through. That's what I've been talking about for years with this president.
Well, and what this president has done is take the position that those members in the Arab world have got to join into this rather than us just doing it for them. And I applaud that.
Well, none of the 5, while I agree that this is an accomplishment, none of the 5 have agreed to commit any ground troops. And here's the real problem. You can bomb these people all you want, but until you go in with ground troops and either like, for example, what we've taken even in the last day or two, in a week, they'll reoccupy it. They'll move right back in unless you send ground forces in, and nobody has agreed to commit ground forces, which I would point out, Bush had all kinds of people all over the world. Polish paratroopers were in, Australian minesweepers were in, and I'm not equilibrating those two. I'm just saying the same media that said he didn't have any kind of support is now bragging on these 5, which rightly so, the 5 are good, but it's a long process. And I'm concerned, just like Egypt's president's concerned, that this president won't be in it for the long haul.
What are we going to do when they start saying that we're killing civilians with our bombs?
Well, here's my point. I think you go tough. If you don't want us to kill civilians with your bombs, root the terrorists out yourself.
I mean, that's what's fixing to happen. That's what's going to come next.
Were they worried about killing 3,500 of our civilians in the World Trade Center?
No.
Well, the purpose of this conflict is to make sure they can't attack us. At least that's what I thought it was. Is that not our objective?
I don't know, because the administration has not been completely clear on that either. I'll give you an example. This is more when I talk about the kind of BS politics here. John Kerry goes and testifies that, one, he talks about, well, if we fail, I can tell you, a Secretary of State of a country that just stepped into a war act shouldn't be talking about if we fail, but that's an aside. But the next day, he goes out and says, well, actually, climate change is actually a greater threat than ISIS. You're like, look, John, we're in the middle of a war. Why don't you focus on that?
The climate change.
Interesting article I just pulled up, bringing up an earlier topic.
Go ahead.
Traditionally, in the United States of America, from the founding of the country through 1981, no president ever saluted the military. Ever. Not Dwight Eisenhower, not Lyndon Johnson, not Harry Truman, not Jimmy Carter, none of all these people who had served in the military themselves. It was considered not appropriate because you weren't in uniform. This tradition actually began in 1981. Ronald Reagan started doing it. But before that time, it was never done. And it wasn't considered a sign of disrespect.
You find that interesting?
Yeah, it is interesting.
So the fact that women weren't allowed to vote prior to some constitution.
The theory is that
ladies, it's obviously Franklin thinks that change is not a good thing. He's probably sorry you all have the right to vote.
I'm just saying this is not some long-term tradition.
Do you
in our
think
country.
it might coincide with the fact that all those presidents served and there was no question among the military ranks about their devotion to the military? And once you start electing presidents who have never served, it becomes more important to reassure the military that you are supportive of them and respectful of them?
No, I don't.
You can't make an excuse for a latte salute.
I'm not making an excuse for
That's all I
anything.
gotta
I'm just
say.
saying.
Well,
I'm just saying we're making an issue here that
there's
never been an issue in the history of our country.
No,
Franklin, let me read you. This is actually
we've never had a latte salute in the history of our country.
This is actually from the language that teaches our soldiers how to salute. They actually say in that language, a poorly executed salute is worse than no salute at all.
I'll give you that one. I'll give you that.
Yeah, I would have rather him came off that plane and not even saluted as to have done what he did.
Okay.
I think it.
I mean, in a way, if you think about it, Franklin, let's take your point, and you make a very valid. That's a fact. There's no reason to argue over a fact, but let's think about that for a minute. If he walked off the Marine One, didn't salute at all, and then made the very argument you made, that's a completely defensible position. But to walk off with a coffee cup in your hand and just go, like that is a slight. Not saluting and explaining why you chose not to salute is much better than what he did, especially in the time that he did it.
All right, let's quit talking about that. Last week, I think we talked about we was going to bring up some issues about Ferguson again or something like that, and you both were going to do some homework. So I think, John, you brought something in.
Well, I mean, this is it's Town Hall, which is a conservative publication, but this is not a conservative rant or anything. It's basically, it's pretty long. But
now, this is what's
happened since.
Okay.
This guy's sort of trying to update. Officer Darren Wilson has now voluntarily testified to the St. Louis County Grand Jury. He's talked to the St. Louis County investigators twice and the FBI once, and the press in Ferguson is saying that he is cooperating fully in the proceedings. Now, the protesters since then have threatened to shut down Interstate 70 on September 10th. They've threatened to disrupt the St. Louis Rams and the baseball Cardinals in the near future. They've threatened to close popular shopping venues. They plan to disrupt community Major League Baseball playoffs and World Series if it happens there. And this was a quote from one of the protesters. "If Darren Wilson gets off, you all better bring every army you've got because it's all going down." Now, that's just sort of the protester side. The government side, the county councilman, they had a meeting. That was shut down by hecklers, people yelling at him. The Steve Stinger, who is a county councilman, he's a Democrat. He was probably the favorite in the election for St. Louis County executive. They had a black county executive. This guy beat him in the May primary just this past May. And some of this they think is actually payback because he beat the first black county executive. Now, that county executive had been there for a good while, and apparently the FBI had investigated the office on 4 different occasions for favoritism, for bribery, for all kinds of stuff. But they're still kind of turning against him. They've labeled the officer a war criminal in this council meeting. They've compared the St. Louis County Council to the Ku Klux Klan. They said that the council is the ISIS to Ferguson. One lady got up and supported the police. She was jeered and had to be escorted out with a police escort. All right, sorry, I know it's long. The business community. Over 36 companies and organizations have pledged nearly $250,000 towards the Reinvest North County Fund, which is dedicated to helping businesses damaged in the unrest to rebuild. Express Scripts and Centene corporations, which have a lot of holdings in the area, have announced plans to expand and even talked about hiring more people. Emerson Electric Corporation, which is a Fortune 250 company, they have contributed $1 million to a program to foster youth employment, college scholarships. Now, a lot of them are still stinging. I don't know if y'all remember in the late 80s, Jesse Jackson came in to St. Louis and organized a boycott of Anheuser-Busch. So a lot of the business communities are still remembering some of the lessons of that. Now, surprisingly, that boycott ended mysteriously after the Bush family awarded a lucrative beer distributorship to Reverend Jackson's son. Darren Wilson, that they've had some polling in the area, and what they said is that regardless of color, all people in the area believe that he should be punished if wrongdoing is proved. But here's where the divide comes. The white residents do not yet believe that he has been proven guilty of wrongdoing. The general feeling among the white population is that the investigation should proceed and the chips should fall where they may, while more of the black, at least the vocal segment of the black population, believes that he should be hauled up on murder charges.
Well, you know, I guess where I was wanting to go with this, has anything been, have they found anything out about why the guy was walking down the middle of the street?
Well, a report did come out that he may have been involved in a murder as a juvenile, but those records are not privy.
And his past records, they haven't.
Actually, his juvenile record was released.
In
response to a Freedom of Information request, and he had a minor.
He was connected to a murder, Franklin. He was not charged. He was not, but he was involved with the group.
All right, let Franklin.
No, I'm just saying. I said he had no significant juvenile record at all.
He hadn't been arrested or anything?
Not an arrest. I think he'd gotten a citation for something. But, I mean, it was the lowest level of infraction under their law.
What about the issue where he walked into the convenience store before this and basically they had him on camera taking some cigars or something? Strong arm robbery, whatever.
Well,
is there anything of that?
You know, they didn't release the whole video, then released part of it. Turns out he actually paid for some materials while he was there, too. Just giving you the whole picture.
Yeah, that's what
I want. But more importantly, the chief of police there issued a statement finally that said they had no evidence to indicate that the officer was aware of that having occurred.
Well, they've said that all along.
Mm-hmm.
So whether he did that or didn't do that, from the officer's standpoint, I don't think that was a factor. Now, we talked about a week or two ago that if the kid committed a crime, he may not have known that the officer didn't know about it, and that could have affected it, but we don't know that
What
yet.
about the officer's eye?
Well, it was.
I mean,
his orbit was crushed.
I mean, there was some stuff on the internet, but you know how
they said. I haven't seen it. They said that there were some pictures that finally did get released of the officer. I guess hospital pictures, and that he looked pretty severely beaten.
I saw some pictures on the internet. Of course, they took them down, but I saw some pictures of him, and it looked really bad. So, did the officer? I mean, this is pretty common. Did the officer have to go to the hospital?
Yes.
All right. Did he have surgery?
Yes.
Okay. So there was some kind of conflict that caused these problems. So,
and that's the question, and that's where there appears at least to be some discrepancy between the eyewitnesses who saw it.
All right. Now then, all these things are said. I mean, I think this is a civil way to get to the bottom of this. But why do you think Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton went there?
Because that's what they do. That's how they earn their living.
I mean, really and truly, it looks like the black communities would do something.
Well,
about
now to their
guys.
credit, not to but to the community's credit, a lot of them were hollering for them to leave. Didn't want them there.
Well, now I did hear one of them tell Jesse Jackson,
"Get out."
He to get out because he wasn't there. He hadn't done any marching. He hadn't done anything.
Well, and a lot of the more reasonable in the community said, "Look, you're just here agitating this, not really helping."
Well, I think Al Sharpton, that's all he does for a living. I mean,
but now keep in mind, Al Sharpton was actually the president's envoy The White House claimed him as their envoy.
What did
to the Ferguson community?
What did Eric Holder find out while he was there? Has anybody said anything came out about that?
No, other than he said he would. We argued over this. He said he would find
They
justice.
were
for
going to
Michael Brown.
investigate.
Well, my
if
point
you read
is
his whole story, that's taking that totally out of context.
Well,
That's
I
not
can tell you
what-
one
what
thing:
he
if
was
Eric Holder's going to investigate, we'll never know anything because we can't find out anything about anything he's investigated so far, have we?
No.
Okay. Changing the subject real quick before we go. Mercedes-Benz, they're being hit on. The Chattanooga Times had an article in this morning's paper about the UAW foothold in Alabama that the head labor official on the Mercedes group board says he considers it unacceptable that the German automaker's Mercedes plant in Alabama stands alone amongst the company's factories around the world without union representation for its workers. He's the work council and deputy chairman of the board. He supports the United Auto Workers' efforts to gain recognition at the plant. Anyway, he went on to say, but in the USA, in the South, it is being resisted, he said. It is unacceptable to me how the company is acting here. Now then, UAW pushing in Alabama for Mercedes, they're going to be right back at Volkswagen right behind it. They're obsessed with trying to get these southern automakers unionized, I believe.
Well,
it's interesting. The numbers: 8 of the 10 lowest wage states in America are solidly red states in the South. 8 of the 10 lowest states in terms of education levels are solidly red states in the South. You can say what you want about unions. You can say that they go to excessive states. Just somebody please tell me what it is we're so successful about.
Well, let me explain it to you, Franklin. All the blue states.
Our taxes are lower, but our kids are less educated, and our families earn less money.
No, if you want to listen, I'll explain this to you.
I want to listen.
All of the blue states that you're bragging on are bankrupt. So, yeah, they pay more, but they're bankrupt because they're paying.
That isn't true.
Actually, Franklin, look at all the states where you say the best states for business, the best states for employment. Tennessee, under Governor Haslam, and to be honest, under some of Bredesen's moves to be much more business friendly, has attracted huge moves of businesses to the state.
And we still have higher than the national average unemployment.
Well, to be honest,
why is that?
Well, because your president's been in for 6 years.
Oh, okay.
Let me ask,
why Tennessee and the South though, as opposed to those other states?
Well, let me ask you something.
Their employment's doing better.
If they wanted unions, why didn't they just build their manufacturers back where they were in Detroit? Why didn't they just build that back? They had plenty of people.
There's no question. They've come here, yes, because they can pay less money here. That's why. That's the answer.
No, Franklin, you have to follow that all the way through.
They can work people for less money.
Normal working people can then afford to buy their product. You all have this idea that you can change.
Except the point is, John, that it's the South and the solidly red states, the ones that so religiously follow the policies you advocate, that make less money, whose kids are less educated, who have less healthy populations,
who are happy.
Apparently, you think there's no connection whatsoever to the fact that we do what you say here, and everybody gets screwed.
Let me just separate myself from Franklin, folks.
I'm really unhappy I live in this poor
all
place.
of you good Southerners down here, especially Tennesseans, I don't think the people in Detroit are better educated and better off than you after 40 years of Franklin's
you can't come
policy.
up with any other examples.
New York
besides
City.
Detroit.
I don't think New York City is better. I don't think Los Angeles is better. Franklin,
I love my hometown.
First off,
I love Tennessee.
Let me give you
I
an
love
example,
the South.
Franklin.
But I'm not stupid. I can still add, and the fact is, if you live here, you're going to make less money.
Let me explain something to you, Franklin.
That's
When
a
they did
fact.
it, when you all were talking about the teachers union and we needed to pay people more, when
We
they did a
should.
survey and they adjusted for cost of living, the highest paid university in the country was the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. When you adjust for cost of living, that's your problem, Franklin. You take an income from New York City and you compare it to an income from Cleveland. You don't mention, oh, by the way, the rent in New York City is about about $50,000
I'm
a
not
year.
talking about New York City. I'm talking about whole states.
Whole states, the rent is higher. New York, if your system works, Franklin, and New York's high taxes are a good thing, why are they offering a 10-year no tax abatement to try and get businesses to come to the state?
Because so many of the southern states are trying to do that to steal
Well, you know
businesses
what,
that are
folks,
there.
this is an interesting point. Let me throw you out a historical point on this. There was a Union officer that went to try and settle the Fort Sumter issue when the South was occupying Fort Sumter. He went and talked to him, felt like he pretty much had it worked out. Went back, now this is reported in his own words, went back and reported to Lincoln that he could settle this. Well, the Southerns, after we seceded, we lowered all of our port taxes. We had a very low tariff system. The North had the high tariffs. Lincoln, when he was told this could all be settled, he said, and what of our high tariffs in the North? What would that do to allow those low tariffs in the South to stand? The officer reported it was clear to him that the whole issue about whether we go to war or not was settled in Lincoln's mind based on the tariffs. So once again, Franklin, all you folks.
Civil War was about taxes.
Well, I'm
That's
telling you
now
what the
you're
report
doing?
was. I'll be glad to give you the quotes
Talk
directly
about
from the officer.
revisionist history.
It's not revision. It's his own report of his conversation with President Lincoln.
Well, Cadillac's leaving Detroit, headed for trendy New York City address. That's where they can get that.
Well, Beretta's
10%
headed
tax.
for Nashville.
Beretta's headed for Nashville. Good. Hey, folks, we've enjoyed it. Franklin, thank you. John, thank you. We'll see you next week on Backfire. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and Franklin Chansey. Catch them again on Whoop FM at noon today and every Wednesday morning from 7:30 to